Welcome to the pod presented by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. Coming at you right after the Tuesday night college football playoff ranking show. This is going to be a marathon podcast. We earlier taped a bunch of the rest of the show. So do 15, 20 minutes here. We will have no show later in the week. So you're getting kind of a double show. You can listen while you're traveling, listen while you're bored somewhere, listen to Uncle Jimmy drone on, extra time during Thanksgiving, whatever you got going. We're here for you. We're here for you. Some people call it a six-pack. We call it a support group. This is also a support group for you.
That's right.
Here are the rankings.
We are your escape.
All right, here's the... I'm not going to bother with these rankings. Here's the seedings, if you don't already know. Number 1, Oregon. They will play the winner of Tennessee at Georgia. Tennessee back in. Let the cake bake. Falls.
Yeah, perhaps not worth all that hysteria last
Probably
week.
not, but it's kind of their thing. Anyway, Tennessee would have to visit Georgia in this. This will obviously get shook up. We already saw that game a couple weeks ago. But Tennessee would get another chance. Tennessee's 9, Georgia would be 8. The winner would play Oregon. Number 2 seed is Texas. They would get the winner of SMU at Notre Dame. Number 3 is Miami, ACC champ. They would get the winner of Indiana at Penn State. All Big Ten matchup. They did not play this year, though. Number 4, Boise State. They would get the winner of number 12, Arizona State. It's projected to win the Big 12, according to this, at Ohio State. Looking through this whole thing, I got to say, not bad. Can't really have a whole lot of complaints out of me. Seems pretty reasonable. Am I wrong, Pat Forde?
No, I don't think you're wrong. I think it's gotten pretty formful. That's what I actually wrote in the 40-yard dash. These are the options now. We've got a good weekend for the ACC. The ACC is in a good position right now. They not only have SMU and Miami in, but Clemson is the first team out. And if Clemson beats South Carolina on Saturday, they might have a real good argument to get in. Maybe the ACC gets 3 in the tournament. So good weekend for them. Indiana drops but doesn't drop out, which I think is fair. The Big Ten teams, of course, are still clustered at the top between Oregon, Ohio State, and Penn State. Texas is there, but that's kind of just a placeholder, I think, for the SEC at this point. Notre Dame's in a great spot. This has become pretty condensed into the options here. Now, if we have another weekend like last weekend, throw it all out and start over again. But if we have a relatively formful rivalry weekend, this isn't going to be too terribly hard for the committee to finalize.
The biggest question, I feel like there are 3 stress points to this, the committee, right? One is who gets what of the 5 conference champions, what 4 get the bye. The second stress point is who of the at-larges get the home game. And, of course, the third one is who gets in, who the last at-large is in. So to hit on those real quick, the biggest thing of the last one of who gets in is if Clemson beats South Carolina, do they jump Indiana, which is the last at-large, into the field? So that's number 1. Number 2, does Clemson, if it beats South Carolina, jump into the field, not taking Indiana's spot, but taking the ACC championship game loser's spot, especially if it's SMU, because they're lower ranked than Miami. So those are the 2 things kind of watch there. Of course, if Clemson loses that game, I would get everybody in the field, SMU, Miami, Indiana, they ought to be rooting probably for South Carolina to win that game. And then that lets in perhaps maybe there's a chance that Alabama gets moved into that bubble where Clemson currently is. So that's, as far as the in and out, that's the way I see it as far as that last stress point of who gets in as the last at large. The home fields, I don't know what you guys think. They seem pretty set. I don't know that if they win, at Penn State, Notre Dame, wins in Georgia wins, right? Those three seem set. And then a fourth home field seems set for the loser of the Big Ten championship game. So either Eugene or Columbus. And then the final stress point is the most interesting, which we had a story about Monday from Brett Yormark about the Big 12 versus the Group of 5 champions, specifically Boise. Boise getting the bye. Right now, Boise's in line to get the bye over the Big 12 champion, which he had some words about that in the Boise State coach, Spencer Danielson, also had some words defending the Broncos. So that's been a pretty big controversy there. I think most thought the power conferences would get the bye. Their champion would get the 4 byes, but not necessarily, as we're seeing.
I'll throw it one more. We have this Big 12, 9 teams can make the championship game. What if it's Baylor or West Virginia or something like that ends up winning the league? All of a sudden, Tulane from the AAC could get in as the 5th spot over the Big 12. Big 12 could be out. Now, there's a lot got to happen. A lot. But
got to have a 3-loss Big 12 champion.
Right, but
for starters.
You're looking at these situations where, hey, we just saw a crazy weekend. So this Clemson situation to me is most interesting. Clemson getting ahead of Alabama. Clemson's at 12 in the rankings. Alabama is 13, 14 is Ole Miss, 15 is South Carolina. Now, these are the 4 teams that are out. And none of them can win their conference championship. So, number 20 is Texas A&M, but they can play their way in. They beat Texas. They beat Georgia. They beat Texas to go to the SEC championship game. They beat Georgia there. They're in the playoff. But these 4 teams, what was this going to be? So, I don't think
Clemson still has a chance to win.
Clemson absolutely has a chance. Oh, they can still get in their champ. I'm sorry. That's right. They can.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, they could. Right. If Miami lost.
If Miami loses,
Miami's got to lose, right?
Miami
and then
Syracuse
Clemson's automatically in.
Yeah.
And then
SMU
is in.
SMU is in, but Clemson could still get in the title game if Miami loses.
Okay, my bad. All right, so right now, this is our bit. I have a couple questions. What will they do with the losers of the conference championship games? My guess is they will not penalize those teams out of an agreed upon principle because it would be really bad for the sport if people are going, I don't want to be in our conference championship game. So I think if SMU and Miami are playing in there, you're not going to have Clemson jumping SMU if SMU loses or something like that. But this Clemson-South Carolina game, Clemson has a chance to get the best win by beating number 15 South Carolina. South Carolina could get a great win by beating Clemson, but can they jump Ole Miss and Alabama, who beat them both head-to-head? So I think that's really hard.
Yep.
And then the Tide.
I thought that was probably, I think that was intentional placing by the committee.
Yeah.
South Carolina has to be, at least for now, behind Mississippi and Alabama.
So even with a victory over number 12 Clemson, you beat, because Alabama still has some good wins here. So Ole Miss, I think, is just out. I don't think South Carolina can get there. The zombie Tide are not dead. They ain't real alive, but they ain't dead yet. I don't know what to tell you. So here's what's ringing in Birmingham, Alabama. Only 3 SEC teams in this thing. I don't know how we're getting a 4th. We have 3 SEC.
And they might not host a game, Dan, at all.
Well,
like
Texas
an
SEC champ.
I think
SEC champ.
Well, no. But no.
Oh, yeah, not host. That's right.
No
hosting.
That's a bye. Right. There's no hosting. So I actually erroneously said something earlier. I said the campus sites seem fairly set. No, not Athens, right? Because Georgia could win the SEC championship, get the first round bye. The hope is Tennessee would move up into that role, into that spot. And so maybe Knoxville has a host a game, because the loser of the SEC championship game, I don't know how far, Texas, say it's Texas, I don't know how far they're going to drop, but it may be too far where they don't host a game. And Georgia will almost probably certainly be too far, because it'll be a third loss. They probably won't host a game. So not only will the SEC have just 3 teams in, they may not have a team host a game. Maybe they get one in there. Maybe they get Tennessee or the SEC championship game loser.
I'd just like to say, who predicted Tennessee would host a playoff game at the preseason? Who believed in the Vols all year?
Yes.
That would be me. That would be me.
Knoxville, could you imagine?
Unbelievable.
I mean, Tennessee
and
has one of the best game day atmospheres in general.
Yeah.
A playoff game in Knoxville, holy cow.
It'd be unbelievable. Dying for it. That and Penn State. Those are my 2 that I'm just like, at the current. Notre Dame would be pretty cool too, but they're all going to be cool.
Penn State is there, right? Just win and you're hosting a game.
You're hosting Notre Dame.
State, win and you're hosting a game. Big Ten champion or Big Ten runner-up, you're hosting a game.
Notre Dame.
And in Notre Dame, win and you're hosting a game, right?
Yep. I think those are all set. I mean, the path is set.
So there's 3 SEC right now. There's 2 ACC. There's 4 Big Ten. There's a Notre Dame. Okay, that's your 10. And then there is a Big 12 and a Mountain West.
Yep.
Now, the way I see it, if you're Alabama, Clemson maybe trying to get in, I don't really know who else can get in. Maybe maybe South Carolina if the committee was like, if let's say South Carolina just goes up to Clemson and thumps them. And the committee goes, look, the last 6-7 weeks, this team is playing great. And yes, they lost early.
Yeah.
To Ole Miss, and like, could that theory take over and defeat head-to-head results from September, October, when a while ago? That's a possibility, because South Carolina looks really good lately, and if they had that impressive win. But regardless, they need help. If you're on that bubble, you need Notre Dame to lose. Because Notre Dame loses, I think they are out. Now, they are sitting at 5, but I'm guessing a loss at USC would it drop them below Indiana?
Yeah.
2
Especially
losses.
with Northern Illinois loss on
They
there.
don't really
can't
have
afford
great
another
wins.
loss when one is Northern Illinois.
Right. So Notre Dame, you need Notre Dame to lose. The other one is you need Miami to lose at the Carrier Dome and open up the possibility that you need if Miami loses at the Carrier Dome and South Carolina beats Clemson, then the ACC is going back to one team in the title in this playoff, and that would open up a spot. Other than that, I don't really know where there's a whole lot of spots opening unless you're thinking Purdue's going to beat Indiana or Maryland's going to beat Penn State.
Not happening.
Vandy, Tennessee is obviously a possibility. Cal, SMU.
More possible than those other 2.
But this is kind of formed in.
Yep. Yeah. No, the other problem, see, if they give South Carolina they're playing well at the end pass, then you do what a lot of the playoff critics have been howling about, is you are diminishing the results of the whole season. And I don't think they want to start that. I think you have to maintain a stance that all the games matter, and getting hot at the end can't nullify what happened early if you're trying to get in from the outside. So that's my stance on how I would look at it. We'll see about the committee. So I think South Carolina is up against it. Had a great season. And if they finish it by thumping Clemson, holy moly, what a way to end the role they've been on. But you still had those losses, and you got absolutely smoked by Mississippi on your home field, and you lost Alabama. Be tough to put them ahead of those teams.
Yeah, I the one that really sticks with me is Ole Miss winning at Columbia and beating them as badly as they did. The Alabama one doesn't stick with me as much. It was a tight game. It was on the road in Tuscaloosa. The Ole Miss one does, and that would lead me to believe. But I agree with Dan saying if they go up there and beat Clemson by 30 points, then all of a sudden that does become at least a discussion point. among the committee, I would imagine. But certainly, Alabama and Ole Miss, they need to be probably rooting for South Carolina to win that game, and then a couple of things to happen, like Miami losing to Syracuse, and maybe even Vanderbilt upsetting Tennessee. They need one of those things to probably happen to get in.
So what about this? Texas A&M hosting Texas. If Texas A&M beats Texas, do the Longhorns get bumped all the way out? Because they would have victories over Kentucky, Arkansas, Florida. It's not that bad anymore. Vanderbilt, Oklahoma, Mississippi State, Monroe, UT San Antonio, Colorado State, and Michigan. Would Texas fall all the way out if they do not beat and end up 10-2 and not in the championship game?
I mean, in my mind, they should be susceptible to it. The committee doesn't seem to think so. They've got them ranked at number 3, which I don't get. But, but in my mind, if you lose to A&M and you still got nothing really in the quality win ledger, I think you probably should drop a long way. You could certainly put them behind the other 2-loss SEC teams, Georgia and Tennessee. I'm not sure you shouldn't put them behind the 1-loss ACC team SMU, the 1-loss Big Ten team Indiana, and that's where you get down to being out of the tournament. So, if I were Texas, I would go in thinking this is a must-win for a lot of reasons, but for playoff implications first and foremost.
They don't beat A&M, and they will finish with the regular season with 0 ranked wins. And their strength of schedule is decent. I think it's, I was doing the research the other day. I think it's around in the 30s or so, but I don't know if it's good enough, and it'll go up after the A&M game, but they still won't have beaten a ranked team. It'll be a resume, guys, that's probably fairly similar to Indiana. I mean, when you look at it, except they'll have an extra loss, and they would have played one more ranked team than Indiana, I believe, and they would have lost to them both.
They would be then looking at stuff like, we beat Michigan better than you beat Michigan.
Right.
Yeah,
I mean,
that's right.
We beat Michigan on the road better than you beat Michigan at home. That they have a common opponent. I mean, it's
and the committee chair is the AD at Michigan.
It's the
I mean,
AD
it
at
may
Michigan.
resonate with him.
Okay, the other one, if Texas A&M beats Texas, gets the SEC championship game, are they in? Now, like I said,
no.
I think they don't want to punish the loser of that out of those games, but they have losses to Notre Dame. They have a 24-point loss to South Carolina. I mean, if they end up getting in a conversation with South Carolina, is it South Carolina gets in? They have a loss at Auburn. They have victories over McNeese State, Florida, Bowling Green, Arkansas, Missouri, Mississippi State, LSU, New Mexico State. And they would have a victory over Texas, though. I think they'd stay in. Would that be a better resume?
3 losses? I do not.
Well, they would have 4 losses if they lost to Georgia.
Yeah.
Right. By that point, they got
so
a
there's
4.
no way. Right. I can't.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay, so,
I can't imagine the committee putting them in with 4 losses. I can't imagine.
Could we end up with 2 SEC teams?
The college basketball.
Could we end up with 2 SEC teams?
We could.
I mean,
Texas A&M beats Texas, loses to Georgia. They're out. Clemson beats South Carolina.
Out of the question.
Oh boy!
I mean,
what will happen?
I would predict
possible,
no,
Dan.
but you know what?
Dear Leader Sankey would be none too happy. I don't believe.
Would they?
That is a nightmare scenario. The real nightmare scenario is A&M, beating Texas, Georgia Tech beating Georgia, and the SEC championship game becomes 2 3-loss teams in an elimination game for the CFP.
Oh my God!
But at that point, like, I don't want to hear them cry if they lost. If Georgia loses to Georgia Tech, it's like, what are we doing? And,
at that point, they'll put Alabama in or something at 11. You know? Give them another
But
one.
that's
Throw them, Alabama.
A&M again is in the bid thief position
Yeah.
from
Yes.
basketball, where
That's right.
either you win the conference tournament and knock somebody else out, or you're out. Those are the two choices. There's no just get to the final and get in. You have to win the final to get in.
All right. We will be back right after this. All right, we're going to talk a lot of intriguing games here. There is none more intriguing than Texas and Texas A&M. We've discussed the potential for the playoff, but I don't care if these two teams were 0-11 right now, which they are not. Adding an elimination game matters, but they have met 118 times. Texas has won 76 of them. A&M's won 37. They've tied 5 times. They have not played since 2011. The Longhorns beat the Aggies 27-25 on a last-second kick. The Aggies took off for the SEC and thought, you're behind us. Tired of hearing how great Texas was and all-powerful Texas was, and Texas. We're going the SEC. And then, well, Texas showed up again. The hatred between these two schools is palpable. I've been quizzing alums from Texas and A&M all week what they hate most about each other's program. A&M fans say Texas is just snobby, elitist, fake success, overbearing, all of that. The Texas fans pretty much play into that by calling the A&M guys farmers, making fun of their yell leaders. We have cheerleaders. They're all attractive women. One pointed out, I don't know if that's true. Are there men in I don't know. And making fun of the fake army, the Corps of Cadets. Texas is a massive state. These two schools somehow are an hour and 50 minutes away. It's practically like Tobacco Road by Texas standards. And so we have 119th game, over a century of spite, cultural clashes, neighborhood clashes, and a 13-year delay in the rivalry that makes this so important that Texas A&M tried to block Texas from joining the SEC when it could not. Remember, it leaked the news to try to block it. When they could not, they said, "All right, we'll take them, but we get the first game of the rivalry in College Station," which turns out to be a big deal. Pat, you've covered some of these, I assume, or do you know a rivalry? There's a lot of rivalries here that hate each other. I'm not going to say one's more than the other, but I would say in the history of this, I think firearms have definitely been involved.
This is an incredibly intense, deep-rooted rivalry that's gotten hotter in the decade or so when they haven't played each other because of the dynamics you laid out of A&M being so sick of Texas, high-handed, pushy, arrogant Texas, getting everything its way in the Big 12. They're like, forget it. We don't need you. We're going to go to a better conference. And showing up in the SEC and largely getting their brains beaten in. Not completely, but they haven't won anything. They haven't won. They haven't been terrible, but they have not won a championship. They have not played in an SEC championship. And then, yes, Texas all of a sudden comes barging into the same neighborhood. You've split. You've walked out on your spouse. You've started a new life in this new neighborhood. Oh, no, the spouse is now coming. Your ex is coming to your neighborhood again. And now you got to live with them again. And I've said it before on the pod. I'll bring it up again because it was so striking to me. The night before A&M's first SEC game, I was there with Mike Slive. We were doing a double. We were going to go to A&M, Florida, and then Georgia, Missouri, and see both of their SEC debuts. And the night before, Slive had some muckety-muck dinner with trustees or whatever they are there at A&M. and they kicked me out. They wouldn't let me go to the dinner, but they let me in afterwards and to this big, room where they had this big meal, and there's wine bottles on the table, and everybody's had a great time. They're giving Slive a pair of boots. And one of the trustees said, in 50 years, we will be the dominant brand in this state. And that's what this was all about, was being the dominant brand in this state. And they have not been able to achieve it. They've achieved some independence, but now they've got to share room again with them. And there's just so much of that dynamic in Texas. I'll stop talking a second, but Texas to me is the ultimate state where the boosters get together at the country clubs or at your workplace or wherever, and they fight with each other, and they can't stand it when the other guy gets over on you. Whether it's Baylor and TCU, whether it's SMU and TCU, whether it's everybody versus Texas, and certainly whether it's Texas versus A&M, they hate it when the other guy's getting over on them.
Yeah, I think I've told this story maybe on the pod before, but during SEC Media Days in 2021, when kind of the news broke that the Houston Chronicle broke the news that Texas and Oklahoma were heading toward joining the SEC, I was literally standing at the top of the escalator of the the Hilton there in Hoover, and with Ross Bjork, the A&M athletic director, who had just happened to show up at media days where ADs normally don't show up. And literally the news broke while I'm standing there with him. And so immediately, right, I launch into reporter mode. What's going on? Like, what can you tell me about this? And the first thing he said, he looked at me and said, and there was only a couple of us right there, said, "We want to be the only school from the state of Texas in the SEC." So it was pretty clear how agitated that Texas A&M was, that Texas was on the way to trying to follow them into the league. And I think that's only gotten worse. And to Pat's point about, each state, each rivalry, Egg Bowl, Iron Bowl, Clemson, South Carolina, Tennessee, Vandy, all the Kentucky, Louisville, there's usually, right, one team that historically has dominated the other, and perhaps even has dominated on the national landscape. There's always a big brother and a little brother. And Texas A&M has tried so much, right, to get out, like Pat was saying, of the big brother shadow and get up there with the big brother. And they've thrown a lot of money at that cause, a lot, including $75 million to pay a coach to not coach, including multiple millions in NIL money the last 3 years to go, I don't know, whatever they've been the last 3 years. Not great. Signed the best class, right, 3 years ago, and then had to fire the coach. So it just hasn't worked. And I don't know when it's going to start working. And like Pat said, they've been close. They've been there. They've won, but they haven't won a championship. And this is a chance, obviously, like we talked about earlier, this is a chance for them to win a championship. If they beat Texas, they can at least get to the championship game and a chance to win it.
I think that certainly adds to it, because there's stakes here beyond bragging rights. You kind of can ruin someone's season and the dream. I'm always taking, it's the Aggie, obviously the whole place is going to be doing horns down. The Aggie War Hymn has a verse in it that says, "Saw varsity's horns off." Like, I don't know another fight song that directly, not just directly mentions the rival, but literally talks about a act of, I would say maybe animal cruelty to their mascot. I don't quite know what sawing a horn off. Do they ever do that? I don't know how the horns get. Do they just keep growing, or do you lose your horns like a deer?
I have no expertise on steer horns. Sorry.
Right. That's how deep this sucker runs, man. That's how deep this sucker runs. I think you're right, Ross. I mean, the one thing A&M has done since going to the SEC, and a lot of this was Johnny Manziel fueled mania, but they have put every resource imaginable into the program to almost comical levels. I mean, Kyle Field now grew by how many seats? Like it's, I think it was in that Manziel documentary. He's like, this place didn't look like this when I was here, right? The budgets, the facilities, the everything. And it's on Mike Elko to finally reach what we've all believed is enormous potential for Texas A&M. Texas, meanwhile, has had its moments, but it's almost like there's too many boosters. There's too many egos. I had a boss, the great Larry Donald. He covered mainly college basketball, but he used to say the closer a school is to the state capital, the more screwed up it is. When Mack Brown was at Texas, he was able to corral all that. And when they get going, you're like, how could Texas be anything but number one in the country? Like when it's working. So both of these schools have such immense potential, but then they often just stumble and can't get it going. It looks like Texas got a pretty good situation right now. It looks like Texas A&M. This is so awesome because it hopefully is the start of a decade of not just hate and spite and pettiness, which I love, but actual really good games, which I think you always want out of Iron Bowl or the game or Florida State or whatever. If you can add that, so everybody in Texas is going to be watching. I was watching Monday Night Football the other night, and Troy Aikman, who had no ties to either school but lives in the state of Texas, was talking about how big the game was. Like everybody in Texas is talking about this game. Everyone's been talking about it. The enormous pressure on both teams, both coaches, both programs. I feel like everyone's walking around with a knot in their stomach right here.
The other thing that just adds a little element of stakes there, Dan, I think, to this A&M Texas game is A&M coming into the season, not a lot of expectations. They had paid the $76 million poison pill that Ross brought up and got rid of Jimbo Fisher. Mike Elko came in. People thought they were going to be good, but not potentially playing in the SEC championship good. And if they can do that and stop Texas, which was expected to be SEC championship game good, that's double the reward for A&M here. You would have kept Texas from something it expected to have and gotten something maybe you didn't expect to have.
All right, we're going to pick a ton of intriguing games. We'll roll through a whole bunch, but it's time for our money moves presented by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. And it's an interesting story before we get to all the rivalry games. There were reports that Temple might drop football or might build an on-campus state. There's all sorts of Temple. It has not been going great for the Owls lately. It caused the Temple president, John Fry, to come out after he had originally said they were going to step back and assess the football program, which led to everyone believing maybe this was it for Temple. And he jumped in and said, "We are writing today to address recent media coverage which misrepresents Temple's position with respect to our football program. Football is an integral part of our identity, and we want to honor and reinvigorate our tradition and legacy. For generations, Temple football has been a source of pride and community, bringing us together to celebrate teamwork, perseverance, and excellence off the field. They're engaged in coaches, blah, 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 blah." The money move here is, can Temple, does this make financial sense for Temple to continue its football program? Is it really an integral part? I guess these are the hard conversations that, quite honestly, even Temple doesn't want to make. I don't think anyone's dropping their football program, but it's possible. We've seen some schools kind of drop out, lower their standards in other sports, moving down from D1 to D2 or D3. But Ross, what do you think? Can Temple do this to the Temples of the world?
Yeah, I mean, this is fascinating kind of conversation going on in a lot of schools right now probably at the level of a Temple. Is, should we continue football? And, football is kind of seen from the outside as this huge revenue generating, money maker for all these schools, and they're just swimming in cash. That's true for about 15 to 20 of them. for everybody else, football is a financial burden for the most part. They spend way more money on football than they make. Probably 100 or at least certainly 80 or 90 schools in FBS. And in I think places like Temple, and most of the group of 5 is in a similar kind of position. So in a lot of why the G5 and others, there's even some probably lower level, the mid-level power conference programs. I don't think they're seriously thinking about dropping football, but it certainly was maybe kind of like a fleeting thought, right? And it's because of obviously the onset of athlete revenue sharing on the way. Dan, to stay competitive, schools are probably going to have to start directly sharing revenue with athletes, because those top 20 or 30 I just mentioned who are kind of swimming in the football cash are going to do it. And so to stay competitive, the thought is, you got to do it. And do you really want to do it? And if you don't do it, you're not going to be competitive. And so why do you have a program? So all those questions are kind of being asked across a lot of different levels. It's hard, Dan, for me to see any school in the FBS really doing it, really dropping football. But certainly at certain levels, like I mentioned, it's being at least discussed. And I think what you're going to see too is at certain places, you may have the resourcing pulled for football, not completely, but there'll be some cutbacks. Put it that way, probably at a certain level of the FBS.
There are absolutely more FBS football programs than there needs to be. There's more that they can make money. It's good for your campus to have, I think, a football program that excites people, that students want to go to the games and alums want to come back and go there, and then alums maybe want to give some money to the school and they want to send their kids there. And when people visit this campus, they can say, oh, you guys got football. Okay, maybe that could be fun to go be part of football, having football on campus. But there was such a long period of time where everyone deluded themselves into thinking they had to be big time, or at least act big time, and we have to spend a lot of money on facilities. And there's only so many that can be big time. As Ross pointed out, it's a finite number. It's not very big. And so you've got a lot of people who have moved up to FBS that have hemorrhaged money in the process, that aren't getting much bang for their buck. And I could come up with 10 schools at least that I think should get the hell out of FBS. You can still have a fun football program. You could probably be more successful at the FCS level. You could allocate resources elsewhere to other successful teams on your campus. And I think you're not missing a whole lot just because you can't say we're big time.
Now, FCS, you can lose more because you don't have any money coming in. But so that isn't always a financial boon, but I get it. Because Temple's gone 3-8, 3-9, 3-9. 1-6. Now they had a great stretch under Matt Rule. There's a couple Jeff Collins seasons that weren't too bad. They're making bowls. I don't know. You're not really going to cut football because it's still important. There's fans. I mean, it's hard to cut any sport. You say, I'm going to cut men's gymnastics, and there's lawsuits. I mean, you can imagine. But for Temple, they don't play on campus. They haven't been very successful. You want to go to Lincoln Financial to see, go root for the Eagles. Just all of that stuff. It's just, you have football in the city. I don't know. And it's kind of a hard spot for these schools. They can keep trying and be okay. But what if you didn't? Again, I want more football. I want more football programs. I like it. But as a school, it's almost like if you wave magic wand, you just didn't have football and you put all your money into basketball, and which you could be really good at. Where football, you're going to tap out at, let's see, the Union Home Mortgage Gasparilla Bowl that they won in 2017.
That's the highlight.
Yeah, they also won the New Mexico Bowl in 2011. And they won the Garden State Bowl in 79.
There you go. Big one.
Yeah, that was a big one.
Yeah.
They got all the way to
the New Mexico Bowl, at least you get that cool little vase.
I don't know. That's where we're at. So anyway, we appreciate the Money Move segment presented by Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA. Let's take a break. Earlier Tuesday, North Carolina fired Mack Brown. Probably ends Mack Brown's career as a head coach. Program had stalled out a little this year, to say the least. Love Mack Brown. Liked having him around. I don't know. Pat, your thoughts on that firing? It's going to be one of the few Power 4 firings. Carolina is always a job you wonder, but Mack wasn't quitting either, man. He wasn't going to quit. 2 stints at Carolina, did great stuff. Obviously won a national title at Texas.
This marks the second time that Mack has not wanted to leave a job and was told to leave. That's what happened at Texas as well. An all-time great coach. He's already in the Hall of Fame, deserves it, won a national championship, consistent winner, did well at North Carolina, but never broke through, never great. I think they won the Coastal Division one time, played in the conference championship game, got trucked by Clemson, as tends to happen. It's time. I don't blame North Carolina at all. I think that it was time. I mean, Mack's in his 70s. If he doesn't want to retire, if he's stubborn like that, well, you got a job to do, Bubba Cunningham, and he did it. We're moving on. We're going a different way because football at North Carolina should be good. Doesn't necessarily have to always be great, but it should be good. And especially if the ACC is really in a flux situation, which remains to be seen fully, but if it is, North Carolina is positioned to be the belle of the realignment ball, but they've got to make sure that they're hitting on all cylinders. They're a basketball super brand. They're a super brand in several Olympic sports, but football matters, and you can't just be trolling along there. So I think this is a necessary move by Bubba Cunningham. I'm kind of sorry to see Mack Brown not be able to go out on his terms, but that's on him. I don't think North Carolina owes him perpetual employment there when the returns aren't there. So fascinating now to see where that job goes. There will be a lot of people that will want it. That's one that people have had circled all year, waiting to see if it was going to open, and now it's there and it's on.
Yeah, this was the one. There's maybe another one. A power conference. There's probably 3 that people have been keeping their eye on the last couple weeks in the power leagues as far as job movement. North Carolina, Purdue in West Virginia, and we head into the final season with one of those already made, decision already made, and somewhat surprising way in the fact that Mack has come out publicly, right, and said he's intended to return. Obviously, Mack has a boss and bosses, right, who make those decisions. And I'm led to believe that, and this should be no surprise, but that Mack they tried to get Mack to agree probably on some kind of retirement or step down sort of thing, and he didn't want to do it. And, and that's exactly what Pat just said, what happened at Texas. But I wanted to give some numbers. Just, I know that things have not gone well the last couple of years for Mack's team. They've lost 5 games the last 3 years, 7 the year before that. I mean, their best year was 2020. They went 8-4. Like overall, what Mack Brown did at North Carolina, I think since 2005, so basically 2005 to 2019 before Mack got there, everything has been improved, right? ACC win percentage, overall win percentage, number of weeks ranked, all these numbers, but it has kind of plateaued a little bit, I think. And again, moving into the world of athlete revenue share, I think there's probably an idea of a fresh start, right? In getting somebody potentially younger, potentially that
better be younger. Who the heck they hiring?
With play. Yeah. Yes. Mack
the
turned
only way
70.
they get older is if they hire Saban.
Sorry, Mack.
That's right.
If you get
Mack
Saban, do it.
Coach.
Belichick. Go do it.
FBS.
Is Belichick even older? I don't know. Yeah. Sorry, Mack. Sally didn't like that
Belichick
joke.
maybe the same age. They may be exactly the same age.
Yeah.
Mack turns 74 next August, so he's 73 right now. But it is a fairly attractive job, and especially attractive given the fact that there might not be any more P4 openings, or very few P4 openings. This could very well be the best one that we see outside of the NFL coming in and grabbing, a coach and taking a coach, or some kind of surprise retirement or something like that. But this is probably the best job. Could be the best job available. And certainly there are a lot of people out there that would be interested in it at various levels, from Power 5 coordinators to G5 head coaches, to probably even many lower level to mid-level power conference head coaches probably would be quite interested in a job like that.
The guy I would politely ask to say no to the job if I'm Bubba Cunningham, and I'm sure he would say no, but is Ben Johnson, the offensive coordinator of the Lions, who is a North Carolina alum. And I think it's just a superstar coordinator. And like I said, I'm sure somebody in the NFL is dying to hire him as a head coach. I'm pretty sure. So
he got offered jobs
he ain't
last
going
year.
to North Carolina.
Not going to North Carolina, but dare to dream. That was like when A&M wanted Dan Campbell last year. And
yeah, right.
Come home,
Ask
Dan
him.
Campbell is like, dude, bro, I'm winning the Super Bowl. What, crazy? He said, I love everything about A&M except I don't want to coach there. Yeah, I don't think Ben. I mean, look, like Mack beats Carolina, NC State on Saturday, and then wins, wins the Mayo Bowl. Just lost twice in the Mayo Bowl. We were spared Mack. I don't know if we need someone in their 70s getting hit by Mayo.
We do not.
He could be 8-5, but it's clear Carolina's saying 8-5 isn't good enough. We've got too many resources. And look, you go 8-5 and you have Drake May. You're losing that many games. Like those are frustrating seasons. So they're not giving him a chance to go out and have a big statement. Basically they asked him yesterday. He said, I'm staying. So anyway, Mack Brown, a lot of fun. Great guy. Truly one of the nicest people, at least to the media.
Yeah, absolutely.
That ever had.
Yes.
Terrific.
Treated me extremely well.
I told the story once of me driving to Austin when he was there, and this big semi truck with carrying sand. I don't know why, but it tipped over on the interstate on, was it I-35, and blocked the whole interstate, done until they could get we needed 10 tow trucks to lift this thing and scoop up all the sand, and it was a disaster. And I was supposed to be there at, whatever, it was 8:30 in the morning, 9 a.m. I was driving up from San Antonio, and I'm call. I'm like, can't do it. I'm stuck. And then they're like, Mac don't care. Just when you get up here, let us know. So they finally clear the whole thing. I get up there, and it gives me, it's 2:30 by the time I get there. And he's like, man, he's asking about the sand axe. Most of these coaches, it's a lot of coaches see ya. He was all excited about hearing about how'd they get the tractor up, and it was great. It's like a normal human being. It wasn't your fault.
Yeah.
So
incredibly good with the media.
Incredibly good. All right, let's pick some intriguing games, because there's a gazillion of them, and we're just going to roll through this. But let's start with Ohio State, Michigan. I don't think we have to wait to do that. If Michigan had a good team, this would have been the lead block. We've been waiting for this game, but they aren't. They're 6-5. Buckeyes are going in as 21-point favorites at this point. Obviously trying to win national championship. Michigan is reeling at 6-5, but is all excited because they're going to sign Bryce Underwood. They're going to get Bryce Underwood, number one recruit in the country. But the pressure here in this game on Ryan Day is, I was going to say, enormous and all-encompassing and all of that. He's lost 3 in a row. But listen to this quote from Ryan Day this week talking about the Michigan game. Play this, Joe.
We got to have, that edge, and we will, because we know what's at stake. I mean, we've felt what it's like to not win this game, and it's bad. It's one of the worst things that's happened to me in my life, quite honestly. Other than losing my father and a few other things, it's quite honestly, for my family, the worst thing that's happened. So we can never have that happen again, ever. And that's been the approach all season. It'll be the same approach.
Woo! I mean, it's a football game.
Yeah.
You're highly successful and paid extremely well, and you've got a beautiful family, and you're a good guy. Like, oh my Lord.
Yeah, yikes.
I get there's
Compare
a lot
it to
of
your
professional
father's
pressure.
funeral. No.
I mean, other than that, and it's the worst thing that ever happened to my family is I lost 3 straight games to Michigan, was really dang good. I can't even imagine what would happen if he lost this one.
Yeah. It can never happen again. He said.
How does that work?
Whoa.
You can't stop Michigan from occasionally being good.
No. That's how rivalries work. Is both sides tend to win.
Yeah.
That was painful. Really, it was like alarming almost to hear him say that. And maybe there's some hyperbole involved in the moment, but still, Ross, you were in Penn State. Ohio State won that game there, and Day kind of alluded to this a little bit, at least the family part of it. He said, talking about the criticism and the pressure that's over them. And, he said, you can't really fully block it out, and you can't keep it from your players, your coaches, and your family. And I would imagine his family has heard some crap, probably some really terrible things that no family of a coach deserves to hear, but that's the society we live in. And it's a great sport, but there is a fringe that takes things way too far and internalizes to a degree that you can have somebody like Ryan Day sitting there saying that this is basically like a death in the family, losing 3 straight football games to a good team. What are we doing here?
Yeah. Yeah, football, like 125 years ago, Dan, started at colleges as an extracurricular activity. It's insane how this has gotten. 125 years ago now, we have rivalry games where a coach is comparing his dad's funeral to a loss in a game. And, there's billions of dollars in the game, right? It's just crazy to think about the evolution of the sport in college, but that's where we are. And, all the pressure, I think, like literally 100% of the pressure in this game is on Ryan Day and Ohio State. There's no doubt about it. And Michigan must be licking it up, man. Like, so free. You can play free. You're on the road, right? You're not expected to win. You can just take a wrecking ball to your biggest rivals' playoff chances. Because, I don't know what happens if they lose. We talked about the playoff a little earlier, but like, if they lose to a 6-6 team at home, I mean, they're probably not playing at home in the first round. Yeah, they still have. So are they playing in the Big Ten championship? Right, depends on how things go. But man, Michigan could really destroy the resume and apparently send Ryan Day and his family into more spiraling. It's just brutal.
I'm terrified of this. I mean, this is that was really kind of dark. Michigan's, here's the thing. I don't think Michigan beat Ohio State. We'll pick the game later and brace for the case. But like, they do have a great defensive front. Like you don't know. Like, and normally they say throw out the records. Not in this thing. Ohio State usually kills them. This is my thing with this. I have said this for a while. Urban Meyer, the Ohio State Michigan game always mattered, right? I mean, there's these great stories. Yeah. Woody Hayes, like, they almost ran out of gas. Woody Hayes was recruiting in Michigan. They almost ran out of gas. They're driving back from Detroit, and he told the assistant coach, this is in Mike Rosenberg's great book, we got to get over we're not stopping for gas in Michigan. I'm not buying gas here. If we run out of gas, we walk until they could get to the Toledo line and get to a gas
station. Not a dime for the Michigan economy.
No, proper gas station in Toledo. They had there's the war. Yeah, it all means so much. And Desmond Howard's from Cleveland and Woodson's from Columbus and they're traitors and all these guys and, the 10-year war. All of that is true. I feel like, though, like Ohio State takes this rivalry to a level that, and I think it's Urban Meyer who really amped it up even higher. Like, it always mattered, but when he made it like we're going to die if we don't win this game, and he never didn't win it. When he was he threw NFL scouts out of his building if you wore blue. Like, dude, I work for the Giants. What do you want me to do, man? Like, things like that. Right? Like, tough break. I'm a New York Giant scout. I'm trying to give your guys play. Doesn't matter. You can't have blue in the building. They cross all the M's out on campus. Like, they don't do that at Michigan. They want to beat Ohio State. There's crazy Michigan fans, too. Any fan that's giving coach's kids and family, like his wife at the grocery store, problems, like, you're a total dirtbag, right? You're a total dirtbag.
Yeah.
And anyone around you should stop that immediately and end it. But, I just feel like there's the pressure, and I wonder if it just seeps in to the team. Like, that everyone is in knots. It's too much. You can't sit there and be like, well, this can never happen again. It's a football. Right. It's not a war. This,
right.
Like, I wonder if it, like, I remember last year before the Michigan Ohio State game, which I think last year was really like, these were just two excellent teams. Very, very even teams, talent-wise. It was one of the rare years that Michigan had the same amount of talent. But the 2 years before, they had a lot of talent, right? And you got Hutchinson coming at you and Ajabu and all, So they got that game last year. And Ryan Day was doing this dance with the players before, like they're bouncing around like a mat. It looked like it didn't look authentic. I don't know if it was or not, but it was like, hey, now we have to have fun. We got to loosen it up. And it's almost like we spent too much time for 365 days, tense. Oh my God, white knuckling this, that it was like it seeps into the program and seeps into the play. I don't know, but good Lord, right, Pat?
Yeah, no, it's wild. And I do agree with you that something changed, I think, in terms of the dynamic of being able to at least handle not winning this thing. Because if you go back, John Cooper kept his job for a decade and he beat him once. I think he was 1-9-1 or something like that against Michigan. That you couldn't even come close to doing that now as the coach at Ohio State. And whether it was Meyer, it probably was Meyer, who was the most melodramatic, horrible loser I can remember, where losses really were like death. And I think
had a heart attack after his first loss in like 2 years once.
Yeah. That I think he communicated that and made that kind of the culture there, is that we simply cannot lose to this really excellent rivalry program. It's unrealistic. It's great to aspire to, but you have to be able to handle it when it doesn't happen. And if there's really something that Ohio State is out there saying we can never lose to Michigan again, you're setting yourself up for a lot of angst and a lot of unhappiness.
They're channeling the darkest depth of a message board.
Right. Let's not. Not.
We often see in these rivalry games that statement of we're never losing to them again. And invariably, you lose to them again.
Right?
I remember Dan Mullen in the Egg Bowl said it. His after his like first or second or whatever Egg Bowl, they had won 3 in a row or something. Right? They lost the next year. I think. I think you saw it this very week, Dan. On Monday, an Auburn player said, "While I'm here, we're never losing to Alabama." All right.
Okay.
Okie dokie. Here we are. So
yeah.
Good luck, boys.
Good luck, Coach Day.
The other thing, real quick addition. The other thing that I think that just has amped this thing into the stratosphere was the Stallions thing. I mean, last year, losing to that team with that cloud over them, I think, boy, that ruined a lot of Ohio State people. And they're carrying that into this game now as a heavy favorite. And so it is almost a grim mission that we must win and we must crush Michigan.
Yeah. Yeah, I remember that game just felt so tense. And I've covered many Michigan Ohio State games. It was the fewest number of opposing fans that I've ever seen in the other stadium.
Right.
There's usually a decent amount, not a ton, but like there's a lot of they're not far from each other, but there's Ohio State fans that live in Metro Detroit or Ann Arbor, and there's Michigan fans that live in grads that live in Columbus, right? So it's not even, you have to travel to it. You're just there. And that was the fewest number. And I expect this to be hey, if you're a Michigan fan and you got the courage to go to this game, you're probably going to get run up on.
Yeah.
Kudos to you, but this is a snake pit. This is okay. All right. Well, let's hope it. My goodness.
Yeah, let's hope
I'm
nobody
not
walks
startled
out.
by much, but that was quite a statement. Maybe he was just being dramatic. I don't know. I hope it's not that bad for you.
That was a lot.
Because that was a lot. All right, pick an intriguing game, Pat.
We're going to pick it. I'm pretty sure later. I haven't even looked at the games on the line, but Notre Dame USC. Quick history here. Notre Dame has had some great seasons that have hit the rocks badly in Los Angeles, probably when they had the better team. 1964, Ara Parsegian's first year, they're undefeated. They go out there and lose a chance to win the national championship. A decade later, 1974, Anthony Davis returns the second half opening kickoff for a touchdown after they're down 24-6, and the floodgates open, and USC beats them 55-24. Like the biggest turnaround I've ever seen in the game still to this point. It was 24-0, and USC scored 55 unanswered. Ruined Notre Dame's season then, too. They had a chance to play for a national championship. 50 years later, Forde, 64, 74, 2024, Notre Dame should win this game. They got the better team. They've got a playoff opportunity and a home playoff game there, but they can't go and lose to a 6-5 USC team. I think it's a dangerous spot. I don't know whether USC is good enough. Notre Dame looks great, but there's some history here that says be ready when you come to Los Angeles.
Georgia Tech. This is really an intriguing one to me, especially after what happened last weekend when Dan Wetzel's UMass Minutemen hung around with the Bulldogs and ran for over 225 yards against Kirby Smart's defense. So what will Georgia Tech do? They run the ball pretty well, and they have played well of late. We saw them knock off Miami a couple weeks ago and win a wild one against NC State last Thursday night. So this one feels like it has a little more intrigue than normal, and Tech can really take a wrecking ball just like Michigan to their arch rival in as far as playoff considerations. Even though Georgia's bound for the SEC championship game, this would obviously hurt and be a terrible loss that would drop them potentially in the seeding. So look out for the Ramblin' Wreck.
Yeah, that game is very interesting. I don't know if Georgia Tech's got enough, but they're playing well. That could upend Georgia, who would still have a path to the title because they could win the SEC, but it would the potential for the ACC to really put a crimp in all the SEC arguments is there, and the Clemson South Carolina game. But Louisville's expected to be Kentucky. He's got Florida State. So speaking of UMass, I will not call this an intriguing game because it is not. But the Midnight Ride, the UMass NIL Collective, has unveiled a trophy for the UMass-UConn rivalry. So they're trying to. They've been playing for a long time. I don't know. How didn't we have one? I don't know. If you remember, UConn had the great civil conflict with, was it Central Florida or South Florida? I can't even remember. They tried to tell Central Florida, right? They were rivals, and Central Florida's like, what? Yeah. That didn't go well. The civil conflict, I think that was called.
Yeah. It's fantastic.
This UMass thing is a bean pot on top that dates back to the early 1900s from Boston, and the base is wooden. It's made from oak from the Connecticut Charter Oak. Now, there's already a bean pot tournament in hockey, and then we used to have our own. Remember, we used the SEC bean pot It's like the middle of the pack.
And then, great.
Yeah. So
and then like a listener sent you an actual bean pot.
He sent me an actual bean pot. Deal. Yeah. That was okay. Don't do that. I don't need to. Thank you, but no, thanks. Yeah, so then they got this thing. So anyway, people are all excited about this trophy. I don't know if UConn's excited about it, but but that's where we're at with that. All right, more intriguing games. What do you got? I guess that'll be my intriguing game, even though it's not. What else you got, Pat?
You mentioned it briefly, but Louisville, Kentucky, in my backyard here, which is just an absolute blood and guts basketball rivalry, but there's plenty of passion in the football side as well. So Louisville has the better team this year. They probably had the better team last year. They didn't win. They've lost 5 in a row. Mark Stoops has leaked popularity and credibility in recent years, but he does one thing that the fans really like, and that's to beat Louisville. So there is a lot riding on Jeff Brom's shoulders, taking the Cardinals into Lexington there. Can't lose 6 in a row to these guys, and for him to start 0-2 against the Wildcats if you're Jeff Brom.
I'm going to pick another in-state rivalry here. How about Tennessee at Vanderbilt? If Vanderbilt can win at home against Alabama, then Vanderbilt, I think, can beat Tennessee at home in a big rivalry game, Dan. And this would be it for Tennessee's playoff chances. So another rival that can basically eliminate their in-state rival from playoff contention. And the Vols have certainly been playing well. They're probably a lot more talented. But Vandy has Diego Pavia, Dan.
They do. The Tinkler.
He likes his passion. Does Tennessee care about this as much as Vanderbilt? Those always scare me for rivalry games. Tennessee's better team, but
yeah, true.
They should with the playoff on the line.
By the way, big like in record wise, Vandy hasn't hit the 7-win mark since James Franklin was coach. A decade ago, this would be 7 wins for Clark Lee in the doors.
I'm going to pick Florida at Florida State.
There you go.
And always hate there. It's a chance for Florida to really have a lot of momentum and drive a further kick Florida State down. But my intrigue here is actually a Tennessee fan who there's an account called FQ_Vols who last spring put on Twitter. We know the Florida State season went awry when the guy said, if we lose to Memphis, the Florida State fan was it? If we lose to Memphis, I'll eat a red Solo cup full of dog excrement. And then he didn't. And then everyone said he cursed the program, and that's why they only have 2 wins. I can neither confirm nor deny the cursing. But so this is a Vol fan, FQ Vols account. He wrote last spring, he went with a parlay. I will tattoo Billy Napier's face on my ass if Florida beats LSU, Ole Miss, and FSU.
Oh.
Well. 2 down, 1 to go.
Get the ink ready.
Now,
drop your drawers, pal.
Here's where it gets very interesting. Everyone's now, of course, all over FQ_Vols. But I assume it's a he because I just can't imagine this.
Women are not that
no
stupid.
Woman would
They're
be silly enough to do that, correct?
Respect for the woman that would, though. I kind of want to meet her. To all of the Gator fans collecting on this, I understand. I will not be getting a tattoo as I did not make the post. But since all you helped us out, if you beat FSU, I'll do something nice for y'all that doesn't involve wearing or tattooing Florida anything. Suggestions below. So he's saying, it wasn't me. What was that song? It wasn't me.
Yeah,
Caught you in the,
Oh, yeah, the shower.
Well, I mean, this is the account. So this became a mystery. How do you say it wasn't me? You can't say you were hacked and someone came up with that, randomly, right? So apparently this account is being run by someone different than who was running it last spring. So it was this is the claim. It was held by someone named Drew, who now runs at 3rd and Goal Pod. But that account then got deleted because everyone was rushing to do that. And then there is a parent text from Drew to FQ_Vol saying, I understand I made a big claim when I handled FQ, but I am only 17 and can't even get tattooed.
Oh, God.
First off, he's talking about the tattoo parlors of America, or really that I think they'll give you a tattoo. I have no intent on fulfilling the claim I made. With the holidays coming up, I'd rather not spend that time worrying about what Twitter is saying and getting blitzed by angry fans.
Well, then keep your ass off of Twitter. Literally.
Keep Billy Napier's face off your ass.
Yeah.
Can I quiz you on what you think Florida fans accepting this situation? Or are they demanding? Yeah.
Oh, they're demanding. Of course, Look, it hadn't been a great year. It's turned out okay at the end here, and kudos to Billy Napier for keeping the ship afloat. But if you don't have that much to brag about, but you can go after this idiot Tennessee fan and try to demand that he put Billy Napier's face on his ass, you do it. You got nothing else to do.
One more little story. Brent Venables, they had the big win on Saturday night.
Yeah.
And he said that he celebrated beating Alabama by going with his daughters to a Norman Taco Bell. Went to the Taco Bell to celebrate, and he spent $94 at the Taco Bell. He has 2 daughters. I could not find out how many bathrooms they have in their house, but I imagine it's a pretty good size house.
Send the 3 of them to 3 separate ones.
3 people ate $94 worth of Taco Bell? That's more impressive than beating Alabama.
I mean, that's about what? I'd say it's the rounded up. It's $30 each. And
31,
I mean, what
33.
can you get out of a single person? Get $30 from Taco Bell. I mean, that's like 3 or 4 Mexi melts, a couple of Mexican pizzas, probably 2 burritos. I mean, that's a shit kind of food, Dan.
Yeah, that is some serious crunch wrap ingestion there, and then indigestion eventually. Holy moly!
94.
I'm hoping like they had boyfriends with them or something, or somebody else came along.
According to this, it's he and his daughters. I was like, how many? Like maybe he's like that. What's that? The Duggar family, like in Arkansas, that had like 20 kids. I was like, I must have a lot of daughters. No, he has 2. So man, that's a lot of.
I mean, I'm all for a good Taco Bell celebration, but that's
make a run for the border. Oh, Sunday morning,
go run for the toilet,
run for something. Yeah.
All right, let's pick some games. Race for the case. I got a 7. I'm up 7. 42-35. I'm up 7 games above 500. I'm up 2 games on Joe. I'm on 3 games on Pat. I'm up 6 on Ross. That's where we're at. I'm still in the lead.
Season.
Still in the lead. South Carolina at
late.
Clemson. Someone told me to put the P in there. Clemson. There's no P. There's no P in there.
Dan
Clemson.
Jenkins put a P in there. Clemson.
I don't know. High noon, ESPN. Clemson, given 2.5. Pat Forde.
Cox. I'm all about the Cox here. South Carolina's playing great. I mean, this is a really good game. Really good game. But I am rolling with South Carolina here. Getting points on the road won't be easy, but I love the way they're playing. Their offense is rolling. Lenora Sellers playing great. They've got weapons. Roll Cox, Cock Commanders.
Why do you have to say it like that? I'm sorry.
This is a terrible.
That's what people call the team. That's what people call them.
Call them the Cox. Go Cox. They literally have hats that just say Cox.
That's it.
It's not us. We're just reporting the facts here.
That's right.
That's the facts, man.
Okay. All right. That's fair.
Right. All right. Moving on. It's tough to not go with the Cox. And this one it is, but I'm going to go with the home team. I'm going to say that Clemson covers at home. It does scare me picking it because Lenora Sellers has been tearing it up pretty good. He's got, I think, 12 touchdowns the last 4 games, only 2 interceptions over that span. He runs the ball well, too. He's just a playmaker, and got a Rocket Sanders as a receiver out there. They've been playing really well, but I think at home, Clemson does enough in what is an elimination game, right? We talked about it earlier. This is a playoff elimination game rivalry.
I'm not going to say the way Pat said it, but I'm going to agree with him. I think that the run game right now for South Carolina has been so good. And Clemson, deceptively, their run defense has not been great. I look at the game that they played against Louisville, where they allowed a freshman running back to completely gash them. So they're going to take over Raheem Sanders, Lenore Sellers. I think that they're going to win this game. And they're going to be able to position themselves maybe in that playoff conversation at the end of the week.
They're playing great. They're much better than they were in October when they lost to Alabama and Ole Miss, and that's why I think South Carolina. If you're going to give me 2.5, I'm going to take. But this is going to be a dogfight. We'll see. We'll see what William Christopher Sweeney's program has got, because they've got a chance to keep playing and getting in. Obviously, the results of another intriguing game that we're not going to get to, Miami and Syracuse, play a big role in that. But lot on the line here. But I'm going to take South Carolina in those 2.5. We mentioned it. We already discussed it. Michigan at Ohio State. Ohio State is actually at 21, giving 21, 3 touchdowns. High noon, Fox. Ross, it's a lot of points.
Yeah, we talked about it earlier, all the pressure on the Buckeyes. And Dan, I actually think they come out and put the foot down on Michigan and play really, really well, like a 48-10 well. I do. That's how I feel. And so I think the Buckeyes will cover that big number. It is a big number in a rivalry game. But I think all that pin-up frustration's coming out against a Wolverines team that we've seen struggle mightily.
Too big a number in that game. I think Michigan at least can put a little anxiety in Ohio State. Indiana was able to put some anxiety into them last week. If they hadn't have dropped a punt snap and allowed a punt return touchdown, that game's really tense. Michigan last week against Northwestern, 201 yards rushing, 195 passing, nearly a 400-yard game. If they've found at least a little bit there to move the ball, I just think they can keep it close. I don't think they can win, but I think they can keep it close.
I'm going to take Ohio State. I think considering that Michigan's trying to build themselves back up, they just got the Bryce Underwood commitment. This is going to be one of the few opportunities for Ryan Day to really embarrass them. So they've got more athleticism on offense, especially. This is a situation where they can really, really put up some big points. And if Day gets that situation or that opportunity here, I think he's going to take it.
I'm going to take Ohio State, but this is 21 is scary. I mean, if Ohio State wins 31-10, it's a push. I mean, it's just 3 touchdowns. If the Michigan defense is good, if there's a pick six like in the Penn State game, or there's and if this thing gets tight late or even in the second half, does everything get? I mean, Brian Day needs to win this game by 1 point, right? Just freaking win. But I think the spread is based on the concept that Ohio State will run up the score if they can. And I have no moral problems with that. I'm not saying it. Go ahead. I mean, we're up 3 touchdowns. We're going to onside kick with 2 minutes left in the fourth. I don't. You already heard it before. So Ohio State is a much better team. Michigan's quarterback play is not good. I think they will beat them by more than 3 touchdowns. But yikes. That's a scary spread to just jump in on. So someone's lone Buckeye. No, someone's lone Michigan. Is that you, Pat?
I'm lone Wolverine. We got Ross is lone Tiger, right? And me is lone Wolverine.
All right. Farmageddon, Kansas State at Iowa State. Huge Big 12 playoff implications. It is also a chance to have a response by Iowa State, who once again finished behind Kansas State in the national crops judging contest. Kansas State, 3rd title in a row in the National Collegiate Crops Judging Contest. 13 out of the last 15. You have to.
This Farmageddon stuff's real.
Farmageddon is real, and Iowa State's usually number 2. They're right. They're runner up. So it's plant seed identification, commercial grain grading, and seed analysis. This is different than soil judging. A lot of it's
all right.
Like if you don't know, it's like trying to explain the difference between billiards and snooker, right? You can't quite get it. It's a big deal. Kansas State, every man a Wildcat. I think the team's all women, but whatever. They start kicking the hell out of Iowa State in crops judging. Now they can do it in football and ruin
every woman a Wildcat.
Every crop judger a Wildcat. That's a juggernaut. Now we're going to do it on the football field. Now we're going to settle it.
Are you drinking already, Dan? Thanksgiving's in a couple days.
Possibly. Cyclones given 3 with that chip on their shoulder. I think you got to factor it in. 7:30 Saturday on Fox. I think we're back to Pat.
Yeah, I mean, I think the momentum from the commercial grain judging triumph will carry over here. I mean, the enthusiasm across the campus at K-State has just got to be wildfire after winning the crop competition. So I'm rolling with K-State here. I think they're a good team that's found a way to lose a couple games. Iowa State has probably overachieved this year, and they're going to get beat at home. I'll take the 3 points. I'll take the Wildcats.
Dan, do you want me to explain to you the Big 12 tiebreakers?
No.
For the championship game?
No.
Okay. All right.
I got a headache already.
But anyway,
just listening to you guys for
this podcast be 2 hours.
In short, Iowa State wins, and they are likely in the championship game. There's a couple of things that could happen where that wouldn't be true, but they don't control their own destiny, but close enough. And I think it's by the way, Kansas State can get in the championship game too, along with 8 other teams. But I think it's enough to get the Cyclones motivation here to win and cover. So give me the Farm Boys from Iowa in this one.
I'm going to take Iowa State as well. I think with those implications, plus they get the game at home. Margins seem pretty close. Almost feels like it's a coin flip considering the 3-point favorite going to Iowa State being at home. So I'm going to take Iowa State. I think they get the job done. And like Ross just said, get a chance to go play in the Big 12 championship game.
Oh, boy. Here's a tough game to pick, too. I'm going to take Iowa State. I'll take the home. I mean, the spread is basically the difference on what a home field means. Iowa State has that way to pulling out games. They've been very clutch. You can look at it as they've maximized it, but I think they're all right. I'll take Iowa State. Drink up that Ames water. Revenge for the crops. Revenge for the crops. This is still Iowa State. We don't take crops.
Lone emo.
We don't take crop losing, just sitting down. This is going to never happen again. Iowa should never again lose a crops judging contest. Auburn at Alabama, Tide giving 11.5 in the Iron Bowl, 3:30. There's been a lot of chippiness, a lot of chatter from Auburn. Alabama is reeling. Not totally dead out of this playoff, though. Zombie Tide. They get to lose like 10 games and they'll still be in that ESPN thing will say they got a 12% chance. Incredibly legendary call by legend the other day on the Paul Feinbaum show. Oh, my goodness. Not going so well for Kalen DeBoer. He could really use this one. Ross.
Yeah. I'd hate to see what, Ryan Day said his life was miserable, right? Losing 3 in a row to Michigan and his family. I'd hate to see what that's like for Kalen if he's in his first year, if he's 8-4, having lost the Iron Bowl in the replacement duty year 1 to Nick Saban. It would be probably a similar wrath that he will face. So I think Alabama wins, but I think Auburn covers the 11.5. I think they do enough. They hang around. We've seen Hugh Freeze's team. Obviously, we just saw them finally finish. They probably could have a couple more wins this year if they would just finish games. They've been hanging around, and I think they hang around here too. But in the end, I think the Tide win, keep Auburn from a bowl game, and keep their playoff hopes alive and hope that, what Penn State, Notre Dame, some others get upset.
I'm with you. I think the spread is pretty big. Kalen DeBoer teams tend to play a lot of close games, and Auburn is playing better. When they stopped just turning the ball over all over the place, they were at least competitive in games. And I think they've got enough and found enough. Jarquez Hunter starting there, but also, some plays they can make on the perimeter to stay in the game. And it's going to be a white knuckler, I think, for Kalen DeBoer. You do not want to lose. I don't think they will, but I think it's going to be an uncomfortable Saturday in Tuscaloosa.
There's a lot of reason I agree with you guys that, and I can't make a decision here. I keep going back and forth on if I want to go with Alabama or Auburn. I agree with everything you both said, but I feel like one, Alabama, Kalen DeBoer this season have been great at home, and two, I think that after the performance that they had last week with all the pressure that's on DeBoer's shoulders, that they need to win this thing confidently. I think 11.5 is doable for them to cover, but a lot of that does come down to, does Auburn play mistake free? Do they not turn the ball over? If that does happen and they play their typical messy performance, Alabama should be able to win this thing by 2 touchdowns.
I'm taking Alabama. I think the real Jalen Milroe, not the imposter one that was seen in Norman, will show back up and finish out his career at Bryant-Denny well. Terrifying number of points, though. But I'm going to take Alabama to win by 11.5. Go figure. The team just scored 3 against Oklahoma, and I just picked them to win. I already hate my pick. Texas given 6 at Texas A&M, 7:30 p.m. on ABC. Boy, there is a lot of hate on Saturday. Good Lord. So great.
So much.
So much. So great. Back to you, Pat.
Hook them. I think they're the better team. I think they've probably heard enough in the last couple of weeks. People saying, who have you beaten? What have you done? A&M maxed out and is coming back to earth. They've lost their last 2 SEC games. They've given up a lot of points in those games. I think Texas handles the heat in Kyle Field and wins by a touchdown or more.
Quinn Ewers has a little ankle thing going on. Never good for any player to have an ankle injury. I think he's going to play. He had an MRI, I think, earlier this week, so I'm sure he will play. And he never actually, I don't think, came out of the last game. But he's banged up a little bit enough to make me think that he's not 100%. And I think that's enough for the Aggies defense at home to hang around, if not win this game. So give me Mike Elko to win the reigniting of the Lone Star Showdown.
One thing we saw last week that has happened a lot this season in the SEC is that home teams at night in hostile situations are able to pull out victories that we're not expecting. We saw that with Auburn. We saw that with Oklahoma. The Florida game wasn't a night game, but we saw that with Florida with their win over Ole Miss. Because this game's at College Station, because it is such a tense battle between these two teams, I think Texas A&M at the very, very least can cover and keep this thing close and maybe pull out the upset. So I'm taking Texas A&M.
I'm going to do the same, and here's why. Texas has not been great on the road, especially when the road has a wild scene. 2010 at Arkansas, they beat them 20-10, 27-24 at Vanderbilt. And they did fine at Michigan, but that was it. They have not had this string of like hard road games. And I don't think as a program they're used to what they're walking into at Kyle Field. There's nothing in the Big 12 like it. They only play Oklahoma in Dallas. So I think this will be the most intimidating environment. And if you're going to give me points on that as well, 6 points, I'm going to take A&M. So I don't know who's going to win, but that's why I would take the Aggies on that. All right, locks of the week. Ross, you want to go first?
Sure. Well, it's my intriguing game. Georgia Tech, Ramblin' Wreck, 19.5-point underdogs in a game, again, to a Georgia team that allowed a ton of rushing yards last week against UMass in a game that was a 10-pointer in the third quarter. I think Georgia Tech hangs around, certainly within 3 touchdowns here in Athens.
I just want to point out I've got lone Emaw, lone Horns, lone Wolverines. I'm either busting or I'm catching you, Dan Wetzel. One of the two.
Got a chance.
We'll see.
Got a chance.
Yeah.
By the way, I've noticed that Dan has mirrored me, I think, like most weeks. I don't know if Dan's doing that on purpose or
I'm
if
in
it's
the lead, Joe.
coincidental.
I am in the lead.
Yeah, we've had the same record for a while now.
He's trying to keep
Mirroring
you from
you.
having a chance to come back.
You act like I'm paying attention.
Hey, it's a great
all
strategy.
these tricks. Yeah, see, that's why he picks last every time to try to counter program, and we know what's going on here. All right, my lock of the week. I was going to take Georgia Tech plus 19.5. So my alternative. I'm going to take Iowa minus 5.5 at home against Nebraska. Iowa has been a good home team, and they have put it on some people there in Iowa City. This is going to be like really cold. I don't know whether there's going to be any, precipitation, but it's going to be one of those cold, sloggy Big Ten West games that Kirk Ferentz loves. Punt, 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 field position, handoff, 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 tackle, tackle, tackle. I was going to win like 14-6.
Man, hold on. I was going to take Nebraska as my lock of the week. I'm not going to bother now because we already discussed the game.
Oh.
No, Nebraska, you're going to put Iowa as like their 4th-string QB against that Nebraska defense?
Whatever.
Know,
they're going to run the ball. They don't throw it anyway.
I picked Iowa last week because Maryland's quit on the season. All right, go ahead. I'm not touching it now. I won't do that to you. Go ahead, Joe.
I don't think it hurts to fade Pat, but I'm going to take Vandy plus 10.5 versus Tennessee.
Unbelievable disrespect.
You weren't around during the TAP 40 years when you could just pick against TAP and be like 10 games above 500. But anyway, back to whatever.
Yeah, the reason why I'm going with Vandy, though, they've been a covering machine. This is a huge spread. They covered just barely last week against LSU. They get the game at home, and you guys mentioned earlier the game's more important to one team compared to the other. Tennessee could be looking ahead just a little bit too much. So I think they get the job done in the doors. They're going to
What is Tennessee looking ahead to?
A college football playoff.
Oh, man, they got to win to be in. If they lose, there is no tomorrow.
We say that now. I'll take
if they lose, they're out, but if they win, they're in.
Yeah, but so you better not lose. They're not going in looking ahead to some game December 21st.
It's a good point. I'm still taking Vandy, though.
Things are getting salty.
I'm disgusted with the lack of respect.
Man, I really like to pick this Miami-Syracuse game, but Miami giving 10.5 on the road, I don't know what to do there. If the real Miami shows up, they're going to win this game by that. But if they don't, that place will be deafening. Forget it. Here. You know what? I'm going to go with my Maryland is giving up. I don't care. Penn State's giving 24.5. They're gonna run them off the field. Penn State, everything to play for. Style points matter. You never know. Seeding matters. The whole thing. This Maryland team is not showing me a whole lot. So I'm going to go Penn State giving 24.5 in a rivalry game. I never could find Penn State a rival in that league.
Nope.
League now has 18 teams, and Penn State still doesn't have a rival. They tried that Michigan State one. That didn't work. Now Michigan State's playing Rutgers.
Maybe they can contrive a rivalry with like UCLA.
They should have done it. I thought Maryland and Rutgers were rivals.
They were supposed to be. That did, the expansion rivalry stuff hasn't worked in that league.
No,
but they should. Penn State, UCLA should be the rivals. It's the best uniforms in college football against the worst. So there's your matchup.
I may lose it all. I don't know what's going on. What a show. Anyway, we're going to be back Sunday to recap all of it. We appreciate everyone, especially listening all the time. We hope you all have a great Thanksgiving. Enjoy the football. It's going to be it's going to be wild. This is the best, as good as rivalry week always is, with this many playoff games in play. We could have done this show could be even longer. It's just going to be even better. So tremendous weekend. Enjoy it. Enjoy it with your friends and family and your beverage of choice. And we will talk to you later. Appreciate everyone watching and listening. And thanks to Invesco QQQ, the official ETF of the NCAA.